And Jane, we are recording.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to say good evening to everybody who's here, and perhaps we'll have one or two or three or four more who show up, but we're a little after 5 and just want to respect everybody's time on a Monday evening and get the meeting started. It'll be a 1 hour discussion because following this, there will be a special meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission to talk about what's discussed in this meeting, and that's a follow-on from their regular meeting that took place on Friday morning. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being here this evening, but I also want to thank the local initiative of community members that have come together and worked very intentionally and deliberately to discuss with Brandon, explore with Brandon some options for what could be done with this project that could indeed steward our certainly the old growth trees in Odlin more effectively and still achieve the needs of the project, the needs of the park itself, and just making sure that we're doing a fine balance of taking care of stewarding our environment and doing right by the public in terms of the use of this park. So I really appreciate the interest, the sincere interest that there's been on the part of the community to step up and get engaged and have, I think, very meaningful discussion with Brandon up to now. So thank you for the time you've all put into this and your expertise as well. I'm going to let Brandon run the meeting. I'm really going to be in listening mode. I don't plan to say anything unless I need to bring a council perspective to the discussion. So Brandon, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm also here if people have questions for me. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane. Okay, well, I am going to go ahead and I've got a little bit of a presentation. I think I can keep this relatively short so we can keep most of the time discussed around questions that people may have, feedback that they may want to give for the Parks and Rec Commission to consider, obviously our staff for us to capture and pass along to council as part of that. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for that to be there as part of it. So let me go ahead and fire up, and I'm going to kind of be in presentation mode. Don't mind me. And okay. There we go. I hope that's coming across as the presentation for folks. So thank you everyone being here. Just want to make sure that this is kind of this title slide is here because we're going to go ahead and obviously with this recording, go ahead and post that for everyone who couldn't be here this evening as part of it and kind of give an update and solicit comments and feedback from the public about the direction of the project to this point for staff, the commission, and council to consider. So if just a brief reconnect on where this project has kind of started. So this was the existing proposal that went out to bid and has since been canceled. The request for bids was canceled in its entirety to revisit and reevaluate this project. And so what that looks like is we were looking to build this facility. It's kind of a two-car garage here with camper check-in, one office, and then you've got your bathroom and janitorial supplies back there and storage for all of the park junk. If you're in the park business, you know that every facility has what we call a boneyard, and this would be trying to capture that back here and being hidden from the public. And so a big part of the discussion and reevaluation of this project is due to the siding. What originally went out to bid was siding it here. As you can see this little outline here, this is the boat trailer parking lot here. And that to just kind of let you know where it's at on the park road as you enter in from Ferry Road. And that's what the existing site plan looked like. And so with it, you can kind of, this CL here was what was called the clear line. And so all the trees in front of this and likely on the edge were slated for removal. And due to the magnificent stand forest that was here, there are community concerns about, can we do this project better? So that's kind of the existing proposal. And when we talked last time, we talked about what are the limitations of the site at current. And so when you turn in off of Ferry Road. You've got the group camp here on the left. You got the boat trailer parking lot. There's a wellhead here that's got a 100-foot radius buffer, and then you're down at the bottom. And so on the right-hand side, the primary limiting factor are these. This is a map layer, that's the word I'm looking for slopes greater than 30% in this area. And this is where the house is here, and then you get the facility, the existing carport facility and stuff down here. And then in addition to the slopes that you see here is this same area overlaid with the FEMA floodplain map, which you can see kind of comes up. If this is the house and the carport's right in here, is incredibly close. And so those are some of the largest concerns about where to site this structure, which is why it was looked for a little bit up the road in one of the most clear areas of good trees. So when we last talked as a community in late March, we had the public meeting. I believe it was on the 23rd. I've obviously collected emails, phone calls with Lopesians, and here were the major themes. Siting does not work due to tree loss, particularly the old growth trees in the back corner. Concerns around tree root health of the impacted area, that we should look to recite around existingly impacted areas. There were concerns about the trail entrance and how that would come together as part of that, and we should look to recite. This was kind of like one of the consensus ideas at the end of that community meeting was, can we do it off the back of the boat launch parking area for that? And so those were kind of some of the major themes of feedback throughout this project that I have heard from Lopesians. Following that, an ad hoc committee stewarded by Sandy Bishop was cultivated to assist in exploring options to recite or mitigate elements of this project to help make it a successful project, to meet park goals and objectives of making sure that we take care of public lands on Lopez for the next 100 years, but also making sure that we're being as mindful as absolutely possible of how we're operating within the natural environment of Odlin. And they met to walk through the grounds and kind of explore options on the 7th and again on the 15th, where I was able to join them to discuss potential alternatives for resiting and mitigating tree loss impacts. So they had two ideas and alternatives for staff and the Parks and Rec Commission and Council to kind of consider. This was their preferred alternative. Let's start with that one, and it does a couple of things. What it does is it keeps the existing house where the camper check-in is, and instead of having a residence back there, you would remove the living quarters element of it entirely out of there and turn this into staff office and camper check-in entirely. And then in the existing carport site is build a new maintenance building down there, and then using low-cost park models up top with a smaller, more modular footprint to be mindful of the landscape that is given to you to minimize those ideas. And so one of the things that was really thought highly about this alternative was park models can be low cost to that element. That if you have your staff function here, you can use the existing septic system that is part of this building. And those were kind of some of the really big highlights. And as we discussed this as a group, one of the thoughts was that if you were to go with this alternative, if that worked for across the span of goals that this project is looking to meet, is that you could actually move housing out of here entirely to maybe another area in the park where where you can be more selective about what it's impacting, since you've got to put a septic in anyway. This was the highly preferred ad hoc committee preferred alternative to that end. Another idea that was they came up with on how to minimize tree impacts was still siting the building at the proposed site, but can we configure it differently to minimize impact? And so, the original idea was that this whole thing was a long rectangle, and, about 2/3 of it or so is the maintenance function, and then 1/3 of it was the admin function. So what if we kind of just cut off the admin portion, slit it down so we can take the maintenance portion and bring it back? Because while the goal is to save every tree that we can, the two most historic and significant trees, you can't see it, are right here, that are the oldest, and by bringing this over and down would provide more clearance for the health of those trees and making sure that they would not have to come down as part of this project. So that was another alternative that maintains putting on the site the overall square footage of the building. There's some operational inefficiencies about that, but certainly accomplishable if this helps to meet some of the objectives of the community. So that was alternative B from the group. And so from a staff perspective, my job was to go and do ground truthing, really, about whether these alternatives would work. And here are some of the areas in which they struggle, is that the steep slopes in the existing maintenance site in proximity to the FEMA floodplain are still present, and that's of concern. I talked about it with our facilities director, and that is still shared. One of our architects on the county staff, and that was an area of concern, including myself. I talked to the project architect that we hired for this project, and that was also continued to be an echo theme of, if the small, what we currently use as a guest house, is original to the park from the 30s. And with what we intend to build, is that the goal is that this truly is a facility that serves the next 100 years. And if that is the goal, that siding continues to be a major area of concern. From a staff perspective, separated functions are not effective. Already between where the office is and where the maintenance facility is, they're working, and then they see someone come in and have to, bounce back and forth, is truly not ideal. And this would maintain that as part of that. And it's just like from a staff function and operational area, not effective. The cost of rehabilitating that house for long-term use is an area of concern that I have personally. One of the things that to me makes a difference between whether we were to go with the preferred alternative or build the facility up the hill is that again, if there are goals to have this be truly long-term solutions, that the cost that it would take to rehabilitate that house would be exorbitant. And the difference is if you build a new facility up the hill, the cost to keep that as a residence is minimal for the time, is minimal for the time being, and it can continue to function as a residence instead of a larger reinvestment there. And then the cost of temporary park models, in doing some research on this, it varies. And so this 10 to 30 years is a super squishy number. 10 years, if you ride them hard. 30, I saw a lot about 20 years, but that doesn't feel right. I think you could probably get 30 out of it, whether that's for housing. In one of the original ideas around the preferred alternative, they talked about using a park model for the park office as part of that. And so needing to replace those on a 10 to 30-ish year lifespan, whether that's a housing one or the office one, is potentially an area of concern. And again, an ADA access is one of those things we've talked about over the course of this project. So in a little bit more detail, again, for that siding, that let's just go to the combined one, is you've got the house here and you've got this there. Being next to that FEMA floodplain, if we're meant to be there for 100 years, is concerning. Slopes, and I kind of wanted to get some photos around this to illustrate. So if you're standing here, the existing office is right behind you, and as you can see, you start looking straight up this hill, and this is kind of, if you can see the the mower here, this is just kind of turned a little bit to see up kind of this cross slope that's just right off the back of that. Here's kind of inside that parking area. It kind of looks like a more gentle slope, but when you start looking at this fence, it'll kind of tell you the story. And when you throw a level on it, and this is the area that we currently use, and it is still incredibly, part of that steep slope, even though it is on a more graduated level. Oops, I forgot to get some photos into that slide. My bad. And ADA. Here's language directly from the federal government website about the Americans with Disabilities Act, is that for location in parking lots, they must be located on the shortest accessible route to the accessible entrance. An accessible route is the path a person with disability takes to enter and move through a building or facility. And it talks about access aisles being level with the parking space, same length as the space, and marked to discourage other people from using them. And they need to be at least 96 wide. You have to have at least a 5-foot aisle in between there, and the slope can be no more than 2% in all directions. So what do we do if from a staff review of kind of some of the alternatives, we have some struggles meeting the objectives of the project, but also need to be meeting the the concern of the community. What do we do about tree loss and the old trees, the old growth trees, and what do we do about root health? How can we recite it? How, we have trail entrance conflicts. Oh yeah, we completely need to come back to the boat launch parking. And from the April 15th meeting, one of the comments that we heard was about the imposing kind of front of the building is just really tall. So let's kind of go through some of these about what we can look to do as we kind of, some of these are constraints. So I found this map in one of the master planning documents that was part of the Odlin renovation in the late 2000s and early part of the 2010s. You had the shelter, and then as you can see, this is before the road relocation around the backside here. And so a couple things kind of stood out to me. Is one is this kind of calls out that steep forested area, being right in this area. Here's the office. Here's where that area is at, right at the base of the steep forested area, and this, I put this map in here to kind of talk about the boat parking area, is that there were kind of two big concerns. Is that if you try to come off this boat parking area, this is the old growth area is outlined in this circle. And so if we're looking at this back area, because the wellhead wellhead buffer comes to about here or so, and you're starting to get it against that old growth area that's kind of been marked out here in this older map. And additionally, the cost of needing to pull utilities so much further is going to get quite expensive. So that was kind of the limiting factor around exploring off the area of that boat parking. Let's talk about what we can do about tree roots. So in talking this over with the team, and that some of the alternatives struggled to meet project goals, but we still need to meet the concerns of the community. What can we do? And so a lot of it was kind of based off of one of the other alternatives of like, how can we manipulate the building and the siding to meet as many of these goals as possible? And so I know this might be a little hard to figure out, but you'll see this is the original footprint of the building. And so one of the reasons it was set so far back is because you had your ADA parking up front. So what we looked to do was actually pull that around to the side here. So you have your ADA parking stall here, and it allows you to pull this building way closer to the front of the road. And as you can see from this edge to here, also pull it up the hill a little bit. That gets definitely off of particularly these largest trees. But we're not interested in achieving the bare minimum of saving these trees. How do we save as many as possible? So, but by pulling this over and this direction, we're able to save a lot of trees. What you'll find in the yellow highlighter are trees saved, and then pink is trees still slated for removal. This yellow one here, that was not marked for removal, but it is a larger cedar tree, so it's just being highlighted here to denote its importance to make sure that it remains healthy. And so you can kind of see, if you can follow my mouse, like this is that cut line area that comes through here. And so we're able to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 trees in total. Now, if you're like following along, if you move it down and move it over, what does that mean for your loss over here? It means we lose about 6 trees over here, but these trees are incredibly small. It's a 6-inch, a 7-inch, a 10-inch, I think maybe a 16-inch in here. So we do lose a couple more in this direction, but they're much smaller. And when you're looking at what is saved over here, you're looking at a 27-inch and a 25-inch and a 30-inch and an 18-inch, just an overall much bigger stand of trees. And so really looking to meet those goals around how do we not only save these largest old growth trees, but as many as possible, minimizing our impact on the landscape. Additionally, so that's about tree removal. And so when it comes to tree health, one of the goals was that can I go back? There we go. If you look back, the septic tanks are currently, as proposed, slated on this side of the building. One of the things that we're looking to do, because the septic tank, the line is like currently slated like run on the back side of the building and around the retaining wall. And when you do that, you end up through a lot of these healthy tree roots, which we don't want to do. And so in talking with the design team, we're actually looking to move those septic tanks and put them into the boneyard and put traffic rated lids on them, so that they're just kind of in a really hardy state, and get them to a really short run, because the drain field is just is kind of back over here. Just give it a much shorter run to where the drain field is located. One key difference that we've kind of provided in comment is that, we want as little of the built structure as possible. And so, the retaining wall is slated to kind of follow this direction. But, if that's the case, about halfway through here, we can kind of forego this corner and just kind of straighten this out and follow it parallel to the building. And we don't need this section at all. We don't need it going up in this corner. We can kind of go up right in here and just taper out, to have less of the built environment and let everything else kind of naturally slope. And we can plant some natives that kind of help give natural barrier to root zones, because even a lot of foot traffic over time can lead to compaction and have long-term impacts on trees. That's something we know. And so, like, how do we make sure we plant natives that kind of help any looky-loos staying away from these trees to make sure that they have good long-term health. So that's how we're looking to do this with for tree health, on some of those themes that were kind of addressed. So one of the other things was in the imposing front. We got a comment that it kind of looks like a fire station and less like parkitecture. And so, how can we get this to blend into the environment more? And so one of the things that we talked about the design team is that in this particular rendering, the back of the building, the lowest point is 11 feet 9 inches. So what if we dropped the overall height of the building down by almost 2 feet to, cut 1 foot 9 inches off, take this corner down to 9 feet. And then you'll also if you can kind of see closely, is that this kind of covered area of the boneyard and then over the building are two different roof slopes. This is 2/12 and this is 1/12. Is what if we kept this more gentle roof slope in addition to lowering the overall height of the building? And between both of those factors, we actually cut about 4 feet off we lose the windows here, but we cut about 4 feet off the total height on this building to give you this much more traditional parkitecture. You'll find something like this in like a lot of Washington state parks, and it should hopefully help blend into that environment more to be less imposing as part of that. So that's one of the things, kind of an idea to meet that objective and that theme of community concern. So I think those are kind of all the big things. So what's really different from when this went out to bid to now? So approximately 12 trees saved when you account for the other ones that need to be taken from the shift. There's less conflict with roots for their health via the septic system, more appropriate building design and bringing it down. It provides way less overall impervious surface by removing that parking out of the front in total and the space in front of the doors. It maintains ADA access in ways that we would want to see. It maintains operational effectiveness and efficiency that this project originally sought to accomplish. And it maintains most of the building design effort that's gone into the project so far, so that costs don't continue to climb via the weight. So that's kind of what's different from what went out to bid to now, and how the community's voices have kind of helped to shape this project. And so now I want to really just spend a lot of time for folks to ask questions, provide feedback. What do you think? Because in addition to what we talked about here, the Parks and Rec Commission is going to meet after this to consider this presentation, consider your commentary about it as they think about what they want to recommend to the county council about how this project moves forward. Additionally, we're going to get, this is obviously recording, we're going to post it for everyone who would like to see this and wasn't able to make it here this evening. And due to some really good suggestions by Parks and Rec Commission member Lopesian Bill Evans, is that we should not talk about this at council tomorrow. Let's give the community some time to absorb this, watch it, spend some time with it to come up with comment, and that can be provided back to us at staff. But also the next meeting after tomorrow is on Tuesday, May 12th, and that is on Lopez Island. So if Lopesians have thoughts or feelings, for better or worse, about where this project is at or potentially heading, provides an opportunity to discuss that with council on Lopez Island. So I think that's kind of the big things that I've got at this time, and would love to see if anyone has any questions or feedback about what has been presented so far this evening. Sandy and Rhea.
Yeah, this is Rhea speaking. And I just appreciate all the work you've done to address many things. But for me, there's an elephant in the room, and that is the trailhead that goes up to that incredible overlook. You enter this cathedral of trees. It's a cathedral entrance, you know, and there is no way to avoid the fact that I will not be able to engage in that trail for a significant portion of it without being aware of this facility. You just can't hide it. And I just want to say that there are so many things on Lopez right now that we're not able to do that would be ideal to do. The sheriff is even in a substandard facility right now because of limitations, community involvement, and also money. The dump is on a postage stamp. It's great to have these dreams, but I think what's people following in our steps are going to appreciate more is having wild space where they can have a beautiful trail to an overlook without having to confront this kind of a facility. So for me, despite all your work, I just want to say it's great you've done all these things, but I don't think you've solved the problem. We haven't solved the problem. And maybe it means an entire different configuration for the park that utilizes land that's not full of this kind of beauty. And I don't know if that would be Odlin South. I really don't know what it is, but have to say this kind of breaks my heart still. And that's it. Thanks.
Understood. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that, and thank you for bringing up the trail. I know I brought it up at the beginning, and I forgot to bring that up. And I know this isn't to in no way like attempt to like change mine, but to address the trail as I intended to do, but lost my way in the presentation. So this is the trail that you're referencing as it comes down here. And if you come into this around this facility, would obviously have an incredibly impactful experience entering that trail, getting up there. And so one of the things that was talked about was maybe doing two things, and that a number of locals often, particularly if you're like from Port Stanley Road or something to that effect, kind of like walk into the park and just pick up that trail, and it feels very park-like instead of starting at a facility. And so one of the things that was talked about was doing two things. One was kind of, you know, for folks that are entering this trail from within the park that are campers or have driven in and parked down from here, that they can enter that from the facility. But particularly for those who are entering it from elsewhere, is actually building a spur that would follow the terrain appropriately and bring it out as far as possible to separate it from the facility. And as part of the existing mitigation plans as it is to do as many plantings as possible, not only to stabilize soil, but also to provide as much of a vegetation screen as possible, kind of hoping for a dual purpose, or really a tri-purpose. More native plants are great, vegetative screen, and soil stabilization around here. So again, that's not an attempt to counteract anything you said, but an opportunity to address that element of the plan. But I understand your conclusion to this point. Are there other comments, questions?
Could I add something?
Go ahead, Michael, and then we'll go to Elizabeth.
Okay, so I just, when we originally cited that Odlin North Trail, the actual entrance to it was up closer to the intersection of Port Stanley and, that area. And at the last minute, we kind of ran out of time and truncated that entrance to come out sooner than later. So the proposal that you're suggesting is right in line with the original proposal of that trail, is to make the entrance further up the road, which is the great entrance.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that background. Elizabeth, and then I think Heather had a hand. So Elizabeth?
Thank you, Brandon. I just wanted to say that I basically agree with Rhea, and so thank you, Rhea, for voicing that.
Excellent. Heather, did you still have a question or comment? Okay, other folks, questions, comments, feedback? Sandy.
Brandon, yeah, so, yeah, thank you for doing all this. I'm not sure yet how I'm wrapping my mind around everything you've done. Really, really understand, though, the lower site where we thought might be an option. I understand why that is not. So now that's off the table, and I get that. I just really wish we were having a more extensive understanding of the whole park and the systems. And I know you're trying to play catch up with all of us because we're coming into this after you've done so much work. But I'd like a little more of that. And yeah, anyway, I'm just not really sure right now how I'm processing this information, even though I've, been alerted to the fact that that lower site isn't working. But that said, I do appreciate everything that you've done to date. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other comments, feedback, suggestions?
So
Yes, ma'am.
I have one more.
Yes, Michael.
I could speak. I don't know. I'm trying to find the raise your hand button, but I can't find it. And maybe Joe can talk about this too, since he's the builder, but the 12-1 continuous roof slope pitch or pitch of the roof there sounds a little low for a forested building. I just think that might be asking for trouble. So anyway, 12-1's kind of shallow. And, I appreciate you want to get the front of the building down, but if you have to do it by taking the pitch down to 12-1, I think that might be a wrong direction. So that's all. I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
That brings up, I'm wondering what materials are you using for your roof? Because you wouldn't be able to do metal with a 12-in-1. Would you?
Let's see. Here's more than that initial snip about the modified roof. As part of that, because this is conceptually trying to respond to community feedback, like we haven't gotten to how that might impact materials chosen for the roof. If it's possible to do metal, on that type of slope, that would be the preference for longevity. If that doesn't work, we'll need to explore, composite or other materials, I suppose. The plan for siding was to be hardy board for longevity and get it into probably a brown earth tone, brown or dark green earth tone to blend into the hillside with traditional architecture.
Brandon, another topic here, but what about doing long-term planning at Odlin? Is that something that you as a manager have to put in for and then it gets funded? Or is that something that could be, I don't know, could we start to look at the long-term build-out of Odlin simultaneously with this discussion.
Yeah, I think it opens up a really good opportunity to do not only long-term planning for Odlin, though I know that's the conversation at hand, but we have everything that I have found about the master plan for Odlin reflects the work that was done in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. I think I found something earlier today that talked about a new residence placed behind the current one. But that's the only element I got to go back and look at it that I can recall that feels like future development. And just like the Shaw master plan that was passed in 2008, like if the master plan documents that were, if nothing else, at least largely around the work that was done about 15 years ago, should go back to the community of, do we find these as still applicable elements? How should we look to update this in the direction of that, particularly to plan holistically with Odlin South's addition? And Scott Rosenbaum did an ecological assessment of that and had some management recommendations for that particular space into the future. And so, I think in a really ideal world, it'd be an opportunity to revisit master plans for the entire system, because again, Shaw's is from 2008. This is around the same timeline-ish. There's not one for San Juan County Park or day parks. That you'll find elements of it in the Ross plan, which is the recreation, open space and stewardship plan. It talks about site amenities and levels of service, elements of that, but it doesn't really kind of like drive long-term development. There's a capital portion in there, but we don't have much in there because we don't have a dedicated. A lot of parks districts have a dedicated like capital bond that's part of it. You'll find King County just passed theirs in August of this last year, and so since we don't have a dedicated bond towards those elements, we've traditionally, it's been difficult to do too much of that. Otherwise, you become that shelf or that plan that gets funded and sits on the shelf if you don't have funding to achieve it. Is kind of but you also don't want that to be an excuse to think holistically about the future, right? And so, yeah, it would be a really good opportunity to look at master planning for the entire system, including Odlin. All right. Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, I think we can look to bring this to a close. And then if you're interested, there's a Parks and Rec Commission meeting that starts at 6 o'clock. So there'll be a short break until that starts, and for them to discuss plans, alternatives, recommendations, community feedback. But community feedback will also be rolling in over the next 2 weeks in particular for anyone who is unable to attend, watches, or provides later comment around those items. All right, Jane, would you like to close this out?
Sure, thanks, Brandon. Maybe just before I do you want to give folks here a bit of a sense of sort of what's next, so that there's some clarity around that for community members?
Absolutely. So the Parks Commission is going to talk about this and see if there is an opinion on how the project should move forward, and to other people's comments if it should move forward. And so that is also another potential direction. And so we'll be, staff will continue to take phone calls and emails and make sure that we capture those items, because when I will be over on Lopez on Tuesday, the May 12th, for the council meeting that's there, to present the project to this point and share what, kind of everything that happened in this meeting, and plus any, the feedback that's come out of here, plus the feedback that comes out of the Parks and Rec Commission this meeting, or any feedback that follows, and ask for council's direction on where to go. So May 12th is the next big date. And if folks would like to provide public comment, we will be on Lopez Island.
Okay, well, if there are no final questions or comments, I would like to acknowledge the work that you've put into this, Brandon, time you've taken to meet with the group of Lopez residents who have come together to provide their feedback. I appreciate you taking that on board, and yeah, look forward to the meeting of the Park and Rec Commission members just shortly from now. But as Brandon said, certainly there is opportunity for the public to continue to comment to the council, to Brandon as Director of Parks and Fair, to Parks and Fair Commission members, any further comments you have on where things stand at this point. So thank you very much, Brandon, for organizing this meeting and yeah, for pulling this all together.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening.
Thanks, Brandon.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.